So it might not be the most amazing audio quality, and we may end up releasing this as an audio-only version, which is really weird because it's the first time we're in person together.
I know.
And but the thing is, I think it's a great episode so far.
Me too. I wanted to ask you, because you brought up like Eve, Adam and Eve and all that, and I was listening to some stuff recently about some different ideas related to accounts that involve Lilith in the mix of things, and I don't think they're biblical, but Gnostic perhaps, or maybe there are some Gnostic texts that
I don't really understand Lilith in a Gnostic context. I mean, if anything, there's Norea. Norea is fucking cool, but Lilith is, so there's a little, it goes back and forth. People are claiming, obviously it's like the same, there's so much overlap between the camps of like pagan witches and like this whole like weird intersectional divine feminine kind of, I don't know, I want to call it bullshit, but that might make people like unsubscribe. but the thing, it's like, she doesn't appear in the Bible. There's two creation stories. There are two creation stories in Genesis, and people don't really understand that. They both involve Adam, but in one of them he has a first wife. But the thing is, it's not Lilith. It's not Lilith. Is only explicitly referenced in the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, in the Hebrew Old Testament. And the thing is, it's not. It's assuming that word is a proper name, because the thing is, there are many ways to interpret specifically Hebrew words, because they're all consonants. There are no vowels. There's no spaces. In original Hebrew, there was no doghesh to like sort of inform the pronunciation. It was just assumed that whoever was reading this was going to be able to know what it meant. And obviously, that's where this whole like Kabbalistic exegetical tradition comes with gematria, and they're able to read sentences like 3 or 4 different ways. The Shem HaMephoresh coming from like 3 stacked lines of Hebrew text. Like they did all this wordplay with it, because it was essentially like this grid matrix of words with no spaces, no vowels, just letters, like almost like it would look like if you had wallpaper. That's what the Hebrew Bible looked like originally. So we would have to assume that the Lilith referred to in Isaiah is a proper name and is the first wife of Adam that we're talking about, which is a stretch. But needless to say, as many things happened during the Middle Ages, Lilith kind of morphs into a folk tale type of retelling of the same. Really, I'm pretty sure the root of her name means like demon, but she's known as like the first demon, and the female demon. And the thing is, or mother of demons, really too. And the thing is, this gets turned into like this kind of like, anti-patriarchal sort of retelling of Lilith, how she denied Adam sex, and so she was cast out and called, she had the appellation of, or whatever, she was labeled a demon, and so it's like you're kind of like, it's this fantasy play that you're feeding to people, like about, I was like, that reminds me of the time that I was a fucking idiot and people made me feel bad, and I was the outcast, when in reality none of that is in the fucking Bible. Zero.
Right. Is there anything in like, say, like the Nag Hammadi or like just Gnostic texts in regard to Lilith that involved Adam? Like the thing that I heard,
yeah,
that they were confidently talking about was this story, and it was basically like Lilith riding Adam on top upset Adam, like, sexually, and he was like complaining to God about how he was disappointed because he didn't feel like he was like dominating the situation, like something like hilarious along those lines. But that this was, I got the...
I don't know anything in the Gnostic text that talks about Lilith, to be honest with you.
Okay.
That could be my own ignorance, because the Gnostic text, to read the Gnostic text is like reading maybe like two more Bibles. You know, so it's like it's not been exhaustive. But my understanding, and I would love if somebody were to inform my understanding or prove me wrong and go and do this research, since I'm doing all this other fucking research and giving away for free. Go find where it says that Lilith did these things. Not where they have been rewritten, but go to the source material. So don't come to me with fucking, oh, look right here, this dates from the 9th century. That's not source text. That's a legend. That's a myth. We see Lilith kind of developed in Gnostic myths. We see Lilith developed in Hebrew myths. We see medieval myths. We see Lilith in the sort of like their brother sister Semitic relationship of the Arab sort of the Palestinian variety. But we don't see Lilith, as far as I am aware, as she is being portrayed, specifically as she is being described in any source document. I could be wrong with the Gnostic stuff. I'm just saying that, full disclosure. But people like to talk about the second creation story. People like to get super specific about biblical stuff. And if we're talking about the canonical Bible, it's not fucking there.
Yeah, clearly.
Clearly. And the thing is,
my question wasn't about the canonical Bible.
Yeah. So Gnostic stuff, I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
But everything that I have read, you know, things like the Secret Book of John, the Apocrypha, or the what do you call it? The hypostases of the archons. There's lots of sex, rape, really, with sort of fallen angelic entities, but it's primarily with Eve, and it's attempted with Norea.
Okay.
And Norea kind of just laughs at them. That doesn't really work with her. And even there are some things in Eve where she goes out of body, you know, and all that stuff, and is able to escape the that's how Seth is born. Really, the Sethian savior is that when she's being raped the first time, she's suffering all this. She's suffering all this material stuff, being raped by the fallen angels that covet her, and so she goes out of body. So the children that she has don't have spirit, because her spirit wasn't in the body. They are children of only flesh and blood. They're not children of any spirit. And that's why Cain kills Abel, and they become like a disappointment, because they're born of this evil, lustful spirit. Whereas Adam, you know, and Eve now copulate in the spirit of love, and her spirit remains in the body. And since she has this experience of love with her spirit, they give birth to a child of flesh, blood, and spirit, and that is Seth. And Seth creates, you know, according to the traditions, Seth creates the lineage, the unbreakable race of Seth, that are like what they consider themselves the true Gnostics. We will keep reincarnating. We will keep coming back. So that's as far as my own personal understanding of that.
Yeah. Other thing I want to ask you is, when we're talking about magic, and I was asking you about your experience, or how you would relate or describe magic, and you said something along the lines of it not being logical. This might be annoying, but like, just for the sake of me contemplating, and if I want to ask another question, like, what is logic?
So that depends on like what century we're talking about, and who we're asking. Let's, rather than kind of go off into all these like discursive pathways and like, okay, who was the father of logic? Was it Thales? Was it Aristotle? Logic is a series of causality which has known and assumed sort of parameters. So something that is illogical will not follow the known and assumed parameters. They will not be obvious to its own sort of rationale.
Okay.
So in other words, like, the logic behind something is kind of like the causal series. Is that an empirical, repeatable sort of causal series? So I take my phone that's in my hand now and I walk it to the end of the hallway and place it on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that's what we're talking about. Okay, so that is causality. I went and did that. Something that is illogical has no apparent causality. In terms of, you know, and there's different kinds of logic that we're talking about.
Okay, I can see that.
I'm kind of talking about the overarching.
That part I could get, but like then when you're talking about known and assumed parameters, would you say that, say like within a traditional system, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, there are known and assumed parameters?
There are, what I'm talking about here is logic has its own known and assumed parameters. Mm. Like, logic will force you to make an a priori judgment. That's the whole thing. Like, the whole idea behind logic is that people are able to say ghosts don't exist because they can't, regardless of any experiences that they've had with. So that's kind of, it seems acausal. It seems like there's no causality specifically with logic. With something that's illogical. So people like to say that, okay, logic is safe. Really what it is it's safe. People like to say logic is the way that we investigate nature. Because nature has causal chains. Nature, as we see from science, as we see from our material observations, there are causal chains. Nothing can just happen out of thin air. So that is what our logic is based on. Really, logic is safe. Because things happen out of thin air all the fucking time. But the thing is, we stick with logic. So that's like basically out of all the broadband spectrum of, let's compare experience only to color. Right? We know that color exists beyond our visible spectrum. But all we can experience is the visible spectrum. So it's logic set. We'll take a look at a very, very small band of that spectrum and say, okay, these are the assumed rules. This is how pink works. I'm using this as an analogy. This is how pink works. We know pink. So anything that happens outside of pink can't happen. Because these are the laws of pink. So it's basically shortening everything, but we view it as this very sophisticated way because we've been able to accomplish a lot by logical thinking.
So logic is not representative. It can help to lend understanding about truth, but logic is not synonymous with truth.
Logic can only lead us to a certain kind of understanding of a very small spectrum of the spectrum of capital T truth.
It's like an proximal system of arriving at truth, but it's not a...
Well, the thing is, it's like there's logic that's mathematical and there's logic that's philosophical. And then there's logic that's just taken for granted, the way I would commonly say logic.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing is, like, really when we talk about logic, we're talking about methodology in a lot of ways, but the main thing is causality. Like a causal sequence. Something that's like, oh, I see why this happened. It happened because of what happened before it.
But then there are probably obviously assumptions made about logic. Like one person could say it's logical. This is a logical causal chain. And somebody else... And maybe, yeah, I guess you could say, yeah, it could be a logical causal chain, but that's not the reality of it. It's just a logical...
Right. And you got to understand that I didn't say illogical when I said earlier. I said non-logical.
Yeah.
Because I don't mean to imply that it doesn't make sense. It does make sense. It just doesn't follow the small group of the small like list of imposed requirements
Yeah.
for, I guess, what I would call common logic.
Common logic. Yeah, I guess like the more I think about everything, it's like everything is relative.
Everything, yeah.
And everything is...
But there is objective truth. It's just not here.
Yeah. And that objective truth can be arrived at through means that are not logical.
They have to transcend logic.
And that's more along the lines of what things that are associated with magical understandings.
From the point of theurgy, more especially. Because don't forget, magic doesn't have to be spiritual. Like the occult doesn't mean spiritual.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't mean satanic either.
Mm-mm.
But it doesn't mean spiritual. Like occult means hidden. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about things that are non-logical. There's a sequence, we just can't see it. It's not apparent to my sense perceptions. It's the five senses that we're constantly relying on. There are other senses that we have neglected and they have atrophied because of our heavy reliance on, the five senses that reside in our fucking head. So that's the whole thing. It's safe to just say that, logic is the only set of rules. But in reality, logic is one set of rules for a very small portion of reality.
Yeah.
And capital D truth has nothing to do with discursive methods. Capital T truth has to do with experience. Capital T truth is gnosis and it's true for everybody. Or it's true for nobody.
So in terms of experiencing magic and describing to the best of your ability, using the framework of it being non-logical, if it's not in a theurgical context, what are some examples of magic that could occur non-theurgical?
Well, just money magic, anything really. It's okay, here's the thing, we can talk about... Things have to be happening in your life in order for you to... That's what I would say. There's something that's called... I don't know who coined this term, but I heard it from Agostino Thaumaturgo. Or Father Jason Spatafor. Okay, he writes in his Agostino Thaumaturgo. He calls it the sphere of availability. So if you do magic for money, and then you don't fucking do anything, you have a very small sphere of availability, which means that there is a high probability that nothing will happen or something very, very minute will happen. Now, there are some people that will deny that. No, I'm surrounded by spirits. I will send them and they will get this thing for me and it will arrive and everybody will be safe and it'll all be good. I kind of don't take their word for that. Now, so the thing is, for me, right, you have to do planetary magic, obviously, in the Golden Dawn. I still do it. But when I was first starting, I was practicing. I was not in ritual regalia. I did not open up the way I was supposed to, because I was just practicing the hexagrams. Mm-hmm. And for that day, Friday, or Thursday, I was doing Jupiter, because that's the day of Jupiter. I did it a day and hour of Jupiter, right? Then I go to work and my boss says, you got a raise. And I wasn't even trying. It was practicing. So, but the thing is, I went to work.
Yeah.
I had a job. You know what I'm saying? And it's completely it's illogical. It seems like there is no cause. Or it seems that my correlation of the two is completely arbitrary. Fast forward to the next day, Friday, I do I'm practicing again the hexagram of Venus. I go to work. Now I'm on my lunch break and I decide I'm going to go to a cafe. Okay? It's the same cafe I've been going to since I was 14 fucking years old. Now, as a young man, I'll put it this way. Rarely would a single young man turn down the opportunity to speak with, maybe a friendly new stranger of the opposite sex. Okay? Or of the same, depending on your disposition. From the time I was 14 to the time I was about 30, nobody had ever approached me in this entire fucking... Never. Ever. And I used to go there 4 or 5 times a week. And on the same day that that I'm practicing the Venus invocation, Pretty young lady comes and sits down and starts a conversation. The first fucking time in 16 years.
That's wild.
So these are the things it's non-logical, but it happened, and there's a very specific relationship between what I did and what happened.
Yeah.
That actually defies probability.
That's a good way to put it.
And you have to, in order for you to say, no, it doesn't defy probability, then that's really magical thinking. Mm-hmm. That's really a stretch. Now you're really fooling your fucking self.
I like that. All right, I want to ask you something that you mentioned earlier about like things in regards to the formation of the system of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, maybe like being built and constructed from guys like Wescott and Mathers and whoever else, but like talking about it in the sense that it was in the format that it was produced in the 1800s, or what was it, 1888?
Yeah, but they had been working on it for many, many years. Wescott actually was a part of a small, like, clandestine group of Masons called the Society of Eight, and they had been working on this stuff for a really long time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, so would you not say, or would you say that it has roots in old world understandings or older times in terms of things that were like recognized about processes and practices?
110%. And not only that, the more work and research that I do, the more I stumble upon, right? Because I have a very, very strong familiarity with the Golden Dawn. Mm-hmm. So I go out and I work and I research and I do, minor personal translations, and I'm corroborating, also putting tests, putting classes and curriculum and talks together. And the more I do that, the more I realize that they were drawing from Agrippa. They were drawing from Ficino. They were drawing from Iamblichus. They were drawing from Plotinus. Mm-hmm. They were calling directly from it. So those sources before Ficino were pagan. Iamblician theurgy is pagan. Proclus, Plotinus, Plato himself, pagan. But they're talking about theurgic processes of philosophy, theoria, divine ascent. If there is any pagan religious stuff, it's that. Yeah. That's what it is. But really the trajectory is modeled, is archetypally subsumed in its most perfect iteration by the story of Christ. Get all the church rules out of your fucking head. Forget them. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Christ is valuable. Christ, the idea of the Christic force, of Christ itself, is paramount. It's the most important part of our spiritual tradition. Churchianity is not. I don't give a fuck what days you want me to eat, what days you want me to not eat. What days I can fuck my wife, what days I have to go and pray all day. That's not for you to decide. But Christ is important because Christ is the theurgic model. Christ is what happens when you accomplish theurgy perfectly. That's why Christianity came out of Hellenism. It did not come out of Hebrew. It did not come out of Judaism. It came out of Hellenism. It came out, and it was related to Judaism, obviously, but it was Hellenized Judaism. It was the Jews in Alexandria, and surrounding parts of the Mediterranean that had been influenced by Hellenistic philosophy and religion. So if there's any paganism, it's there. It's in the theurgic stuff that leads us to Christianity proper.
And were these Christian conceptions involving Christ in these ways held within that original 8 members of this group that you're talking about?
The Society of Eight?
Yeah.
But the Society of Eight was more like they're developing ideas, they're developing tarot card correspondences, they're developing Kabbalistic stuff. It wasn't necessarily the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn proper yet. That was something that I think truly was, that was in Wescott. There's a lot of mystery surrounding it that we'll likely never know about what was going on. But my best guess, after reading about 12 different fucking books and, reading all of his literature it's been passed down to me through the order, the flying rolls, his speeches, his eulogizing Blavatsky for the Theosophical Society because he was a member, his participation in talking about the Rosicrucians, all this stuff. All of this stuff leads me to believe that Wescott was really the man behind all of the Golden Dawn. And Mathers was a brilliant magician and ritualist. And so he employed Mathers to kind of help him with this workload and to really flesh the rituals out. And of course, Moina Mathers, or Mina Bergson, was her proper name, Mina Mathers after they married. She was really the clairvoyant and psychic genius. She did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the vision work that went into the Golden Dawn curriculum at the higher levels and things like that. But this conception of esoteric Christianity, I can't say too much, especially now that you're an initiate, but I will tell you this, because in that welcome letter that I gave you, it says the same thing. I'm not saying anything now that Chick hasn't written. Christianity is really... You need to be able to work with all symbol systems, because we don't abandon the stuff that comes before Christianity. But Christianity, esoteric Christianity, is the heart of the Golden Dawn, completely. But you don't get it until you've become an adept of the Golden Dawn.
And was it always the case that the Golden Dawn was an outer order of the inner order in terms of like Rosicrucianism, or did they emerge in tandem, or was that an adaptation or an innovation?
It was I'll put it this way, the inner order curriculum and the working out of the understanding of the ritual documents came later. So essentially what happens is this: they inherit a group of documents called the Cipher manuscripts. Now, people say they're forgeries. Here's the thing. Wescott's letters from Fräulein Sprengel, or what, SND, this German adept, for anybody who knows about the Golden Dawn, for anybody who doesn't, I'm going to do a massive history on the Golden Dawn this winter. So you'll be well acquainted with all this stuff. But his letters may have been forged, but not the Cipher manuscripts themselves. And so the Cipher manuscripts are ciphers, right? That's what a cipher is. It's code. And it's an encoded document that gives the curriculum and the rituals of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the outer. And so it's just a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of stage directions and very obscure, dry stuff. And these little weird, fill this very strange marginalia. I think like the first thing, like on one of the first pages is, it just says in the margins, avoid Roman Catholics, but out of pity. Like it's these very strange like notes and things like that. And what they have to do is they have to flesh this out into rituals and some kind of working curriculum, which is what they do. And then once they have fleshed all that stuff out and designed it, then they begin to try to understand it. And it just goes deeper and deeper. But from the beginning, there was always the idea of an inner order, and it was always Rosicrucian. What you did in that inner order, what those rituals looked like, the things you practiced and studied, came later. But there was always an inner order that was explicitly Rosicrucian.
Okay. Yeah. We're at the 30-minute mark, so...
You got any last things or any closing remarks?
Any closing remarks?
Or any other question?
Yeah, I did have another thing I think could be interesting to get into. And that is that I find it interesting that you talk about these 8 individuals that were Masonic.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it the case that it's not generally accepted for Golden Dawn activities to take place within Masonic institutions?
Well, the thing is, the Society of Eight, like I said earlier, was not the Golden Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the curriculum, I'll put it this way, the Kabbalistic correspondences and the tarot came from the work of the Society of Eight. Wescott had this whole trajectory where he quit his job for 2 full years. He took a hiatus. He went on temporary leave for 2 years to lock himself in his London townhome with his family. He had several children as a young man, and he studied the Kabbalah for 2 years.
Okay, well...
So then he comes out, and he joins this Society of Eight, and I believe Kenneth MacKenzie was, very, very influential Mason during that time. Very esoteric. Kenneth MacKenzie had actually spent time with Eliphas Levi. He was like the bridging gap between those generations. And it's believed that actually one of the theories of where they got the Cipher manuscripts was after Kenneth MacKenzie's death. They inherited them. So they either found them or were given to him. There are all sorts of stories, but that's a theory, that Kenneth MacKenzie was working on these things.
Okay, well, even regardless of that, Rosicrucianism, I guess I'm not as confident in understanding the origins, but there are Masonic Rosicrucian bodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there's an outer order.
Well, the Golden Dawn was completely it was basically like they went rogue. They did not operate with any Masonic charter, but they did have a charter from a lodge of this I forget what it was called, the Morgenrot or something like that. They found an order. Apparently, they had contacted an order of Continental Masonry in Germany or Austria, those areas, and that's where they claimed to get their charter. But it wasn't regular English Masonry. And so the thing is, they met clandestinely. This group of they didn't report their findings. We know they weren't like meeting and recording like official Masonic minutes. They were a group of esoteric Masons that got together to do some of this work, and we know about it because we have their journals. We have Wescott's journal. That's how we know it even existed. So the Golden Dawn then gets started later with a lot of those Kabbalistic and tarot correspondences. They were working through the stuff that, like, Court de Gebelin and Atelier were kind of fleshing out in French Masonry and in the tarot in France, a little bit earlier and around that time. So then what happens is it's after they find the Cipher manuscripts, William Robert Woodman, William Wynne Wescott, and Samuel Little Mathers, they start the Golden Dawn. But the thing is, yes, they are high-grade Rosicrucian Masons, but they didn't. The Golden Dawn had a separate claim to Rosicrucianism. They undoubtedly would have viewed it as the same. They would have viewed it as an expansion. They would have said, this is true Masonry. But a lot of people were doing that for a long time, especially in France. You got Cagliostro and his right of the Memphis Mizraim saying, okay, this is the true face of Masonry. And it's all that kind of experimentation. But the thing is, they weren't... It really, like, people would... It wouldn't even have been like Masons were like, the Golden Dawn can't meet here. It would have been like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you dressed as Egyptians? Why are there women here? It would have been like, we don't know what you're doing. Someone please explain. So they didn't meet in Masonic halls.
And there are differences between Masonic Rosicrucian bodies and non-Masonic Rosicrucian bodies, or is there some...
For everything that exists Masonically, somebody somewhere got an initiation, either drew up a charter or found somebody who would draw one up for them, and they make fucking outside orders outside of Masonry. That's not a judgment. That's just the facts.
And some may be better and some may be worse.
Yeah, I tend to characterize it by what's the overall intentionality and the egregore of the group. Are these people? My thing is, I'm big on spirit. Are you animated by the spirit with which you claim to be allied? If you don't embody that, then I don't care if you're Masonic or non-Masonic.
Yeah.
But another thing is, like, most of those people won't like come out in the open waving their charter saying, over here, Templars over here, Rosicrucians over here. It's mostly they're doing quiet, private fucking work. And when I do see people who jump out and start kind of like, again, that, hi, my name is Christian Rosenkreutz, then I'm like, okay, I'm worried, right? Because what's the first thing about a Rosicrucian, historically?
Blend in with your country or something along those lines?
Very good. Very good. Right? They're admonished to wear the clothes of the country in which they live. And in all their writings, they, you won't find us, we'll find you. Because a Rosicrucian was invisible. Nobody's supposed to know who was a Rosicrucian. They were called the Invisible College. No one was ever supposed to be a known Rosicrucian. So when people step up and say, I'm Rosicrucian, I get it. Times have changed. We're working in this very complex and nuanced system of esoteric orders now, trying to figure out the internet, but it's just not, that's not one of those things where you want to see, like, the head guy shouldn't come out and start talking about how he's a fucking Rosicrucian. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, be quiet, do your work. Because there is a community of people out there that are very serious and very dedicated. And if what you're doing really has the spirit, they will come to you. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where it's like, you'll find each other. When it's an extension of the Hermetic axiom, when the student is ready, the master appears. It's the same thing for these orders. They will, if it's true, your order will populate itself with good people.
I think that's a good place to leave it on.
Awesome.
Well, this has been another episode of the Aetherica podcast. Live in person. Unfortunately, this segment is not going to have any visual, even though we are in person.
We're still here. We're still in the library.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Thanks for coming all the way out here, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
It's been fun.
Sure it'll be more times to come. So.
And be on the lookout, because we are both flying back to, Sky's flying back. I'm flying to Phoenix tomorrow, Arizona, where we will be meeting Tuesday with our good friends Jamie Paul Lamb, Jake Trayer, and maybe Pat Shanahan. I'm not really 100% sure if he's actually going to be there, but we're going to do a tripod.
Yeah.
So I know that this isn't coming out live, but that if you weren't aware of the Tree Arcanum Minds, that is Tria Prima Arcanum Philosophical Minds, basically, Aetherica and those dudes, then go find that, go check that out. It's got to be on one of our channels.
Boom, there it is. All right. Farewell.